In this tutorial I'll tell you about the basics on how to color your drawings, and I'll go through the use of layers and how important they are. So I'll start out by going through how I made my drawing, the outlines. I always work, as I say, in layers, and first I started by using a sketch I made on ordinary paper, which I scanned into my computer, and I used that as a sketch layer. I made that down here as the first layer, and as you can see I cut it a bit in it, and I just used my marquee up here and cut the head out so I could make a new layer and be able to move it around a bit. So that's a great thing about working with layers, that you don't have to erase what you've done. You can just cut in it and then move it around. And then you can do something like this. I just took an ordinary brush, made a new layer, and made some adjustments. I wanted the legs to be different and the arm here. So then I got the sketch as I wanted, and then I just started to make my outlines as I showed in my number 2 tutorial about how to use the pen tool. So I just made outlines on different layers, and the reason why I use layers is because I don't have to erase something on my drawing. I don't have to do everything over again. I can just adjust one layer at a time if I have to, and also I can move some of the things around here, like for instance this little star down here. I can just move that around and place it where I want it to be, so I don't have to erase it and draw it again. I can just move it. And for the flowers here, when you want to do something, if you draw on this umbrella and you want to do like a pattern inside it, make that pattern in a different layer, because when I was drawing like this flower here, I wanted to erase some of it, and so that I didn't erase the umbrella, also this outline, I had to make a new layer, because then I could just erase the flower and not erase the umbrella itself. So that's the reason why you're working in layers, so you can always adjust one thing at a time without ruining some of the other things you have done. So now when you have made all the outlines that you want, you just remove the things you don't want to be on your drawing. So this is what I want on my drawing, and then I go up here on layer and find merge visible, not merge down, because then you only merge one layer down at a time. I just merge visible, and then I got all my outlines here on that layer, and I just call that outline, like that. And then I want to keep this white layer, because then I can see what I'm working on, and then I can just delete the other layers here by clicking on them and delete layer, like that. So I only have the layers that I want. So now I have my drawing and I can start coloring. So now you can start coloring your drawing, and again you have to think in layers, and you have to be aware that your outline layers is always going to be on top, because you want that to be shown. And if you put a colored layer on top of the outline, you just remove some of the outline. So you want the outline layer to be on top. And when you're starting to paint your drawing here and color it, you have to plan a bit. I always paint the background first, and as you can see on this drawing, I have like 2 areas with 2 different colors here in my background. I have the sky, have to be blue, and the sand, the beach down here, they have to be some kind of yellow color. So the first thing I do is that I go up here and make a new layer, of course, and I call it sky. Always give it a name so you know which layer you're working on. And then I go down here and find a blue color. I'll try this one. And then I go over here in my tools and find the paint bucket, because then I can just click on my canvas and the whole canvas gets blue. And that's okay, because every time I'm making a new layer on top of this blue one here, I'll just paint on top of it and the blue color disappears underneath it. So now I want to make the sand. I make a new layer, call it sand, like that. That's on top of my sky layer. And then I go down here and find some kind of yellow brownish color, maybe that one. I can adjust that later as the other colors come on my drawing as well. You have to do that sometimes, just adjust it a bit. Well, now I have to scroll in, and I do that by clicking Alt on my keyboard and scroll on my mouse like that. Maybe that was a bit too close. I scroll it back again because I have to see some of my outlines here very precise. I'll just move that a bit also, like that. So now I go up and choose what they call a lasso tool. I choose the middle one here, and then I select the area that I want to paint, and I do that by clicking on the canvas along this outline here as precisely as I can, because now I want to select this area to get a new color. I don't want the whole canvas to get this yellow color, only this bit down here. And you know, it could take a bit of time to select like this, but in the end it saves you time because you don't have to use a brush and paint it all. And you know, with a bit of practice you'll get a hang of it. I don't use it as much, only for big areas like this one, and then I try to connect it like that. So now this area is selected. So I go down on my paint bucket here and click on the canvas and back to the lasso tool, and then I right click and deselect. So if I scroll back, you can see I have now colored the sky and the sand. So that's fairly easy to do. The thing I want to do now is going to this umbrella and paint that. Now you can paint in different ways. People have different ways of painting their drawings, and I don't do it the same way every time. Sometimes I just take a brush and start painting. But I want to show you a little tip here. First of all, I'll just make a layer, call it umbrella. So now I have this umbrella layer, and I just go down and choose the color I want. I want a kind of purple, like that. And instead of taking my brush and starting to paint this big area here, I can select that area also. But I don't want to use the lasso tool because that will take a lot of time going around all these outlines here. So I'll choose what they call a magic wand. It's this one. It looks a bit like a magic wand. But I have to be aware that these outlines are not in this layer. So if I click on that, I'll just scroll out. You know, it chooses the whole canvas because there are no outlines to choose from. So it just chooses the whole canvas. I'll deselect that again. So I have to go to my outline layer and then click on this area, and then it has selected only this little area down here. I'll scroll back in. So now I can take my paint bucket like that, but again be aware that I have to go back to my umbrella layer and paint it like that. Otherwise I would be painting on my outline layer, and I don't want that because then it gives a lot of mess if I want to adjust it. And again I go up to my magic wand and deselect it. Now as you can see, it also selected some of the flower here, and that's because the outline didn't go all the way down. And that's what happens when you're using the magic wand. If you haven't made your outlines going all the way, it finds its way into some of the other things, but it really doesn't matter because you can adjust that along the way. Now some people are using a lot of time selecting like this, and you know, all these little areas also, but I don't do that because sometimes it can happen like this, and then you just select the whole thing, and that's not what you want, and it could take a lot of time doing that back and forth. So I just take my brush and be aware that I'm on my umbrella layer, and then just paint the rest, all the little details here. And then I can use my eraser if I am painting outside the outline, and just adjust it like that. So it's a bit of work, but it's great fun, and I just love drawing like this. So I do a bit of both. I select sometimes, and sometimes I just use my brush. Now I want to give you a little tip. If I were to draw this with my brush and I went outside the outline here, I can use my eraser and just remove it like that. Or I can also again use this lasso here and just select the area. If I can get it to connect like there. And then I just press Ctrl X, and then it's gone. So that's fairly easy. Now, this little flower down here, I don't want to use time selecting that and erasing it, or using my eraser, because now I just make a new layer and call it flower. And then I find the color I want. I want some kind of off-white, and for that I always find the yellow and take a white color up here, not all the way to the corner, but almost. And then I use my brush, and then I just paint on top of that, because then the purple color is gone without me having to erase it first and then color it afterwards again. So again, that's another great thing about layers. You don't have to do things twice as you do sometimes when you're drawing coloring by hand on paper or a real canvas. So that's the great thing about working in layers here in Photoshop. Well,